could catch up to her in the future. Our next guest is telling us if genetic testing can really predict if you are destined to develop a disease. Please welcome Dr. Marie Savard, also known as Dr. Marie. How are you, Dr. Marie?
Thanks for having
me. Absolutely. So, this show we've been talking about genes and how they affect us. Can you tell us what exactly are genes? What do they do?
Genes are little pieces of DNA, our roadmap to the future. They're kind of, it's the directions to how you live your life, who you're going to be. There's about 30,000 of them in each one of our cells. You get half a pair from your mom, half from your dad, and together those genes will determine which direction or which path you might take. But guess what? We've now learned there's so many other things that can kind of take you off course. So it's not just about the genes.
Well, how does a gene take the path to a disease?
Well, what happens, a gene produces a protein in the body, and that protein is really important to kind of direct traffic and decide where to go, what to do. But what can happen, you can get a mutation, which is a word that really means a permanent problem in that DNA. You can get it first by heredity. That means, for example, the BRCA1 gene, the BRCA gene, you can inherit from a parent, or you can acquire it, meaning through your lifetime, maybe through lifestyle, through things that you're exposed to, all sorts of toxins can change that DNA. And then you're not going to pass that on. You're just going to acquire it yourself and end up maybe with a cancer.
With all the genetic studies that are being done to find out one's gene pool, are people doing it primarily for prevention, or are there other reasons?
Well, I think Edie's story is the most common now. In the past, we used to do gene tests all the time for rare diseases. But now that we're learning more about that whole alphabet of genes that we all have, people are really asking, you know, I have cancer in my family, heart disease, let's do some of these tests. Unfortunately, a lot of them have been advertised to the consumer way too early. There's still a lot more we need to know. So I do worry that some people are having the test without really going through the counseling. Edie was great because she did have the counseling. She knew that she was making the right decision.
So you don't think that we should just go out and get tested for everything?
No. In fact, I think the problem is we promoted genes as though suddenly that's the template of what our future is going to be. That roadmap can change depending. It's not just the genes. Actually, there was an article yesterday in the New York Times that looked at the surface of the genes, and it showed that we can change what's on the surface of the genes that can turn off and turn on what cells are working. I mean,
So
if
the
you
environment, affecting the
So
environment
smoking,
around,
for instance,
to click on a gene.
destroy your...
Sure.
Okay, so this is a question. So when it comes to cancer, we have a lot of women who are just going to get genetically tested to see if they carry this breast cancer gene, just like Edie was talking about. So what do these tests show?
Well, what they're doing, they've looked at the entire sort of gene map, and they're looking for little areas on that gene map that reproduce or look the same as another person that has that same defect. And really, what we're saying is this type of testing is still in the very early stages. They're looking for some little changes, but breast cancer, for example, we know only 5 to 10% are related to this BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene.
It's not a get out of jail free pass if you test negative for the gene.
Not at all. And I think we're increasingly realizing, especially if you have a family history such as Edie did, there's another story. There's another problem in the genes that we just haven't yet identified.
Right. So like if you test, if you test positive for this, for anything, I mean, should you be getting counseling if somebody says, oh, you've got this, looks like this been in your family, or you've developed this? I mean, because I think people get tested and then run amok because, you know, then what do? So are there things you can do to sort of slow the process down?
Yes. First, I would recommend size up your family history. Our family history still remains the most powerful tool we have to predict our health future. That's the truth. Genetic testing is limited. Where it has been powerful is in testing for the breast cancer gene. For women who test positive, now that's only 5 to 10% of women, that means something. You have a very high chance, maybe a 60% chance or more of developing breast and, more, as important, if not more so, ovarian cancer. And even in your dad's side, you know, the BRCA gene comes from your dad, too.
Yes.
And I'm sure that was another concern about Edie's history. Her dad had prostate cancer. Men who inherit the gene can have an increased risk of prostate cancer, colon cancer, and breast
What
cancer.
about Alzheimer's? My grandfather just passed away this past year from Alzheimer's. I would definitely consider getting tested for that. Do you recommend people with the family history figuring out if, you know, Alzheimer's is in their future?
Well, here's the deal with Alzheimer's. 5% of the Alzheimer's disease occurs in very young people. And if you have a family history of it occurring in someone under the age of 60, that's quite young. there is a gene that can tell you whether or not you will develop Alzheimer's. So if you get tested and you're positive, that's very worrisome. You will likely develop Alzheimer's disease.
There's
But
no
for the
cure
rest of
for
us,
it. There's really no
But
cure.
there are things you can
What-
do, no? Like
what can you do?
health-wise to maybe
well,
not
that's-
create an environment where that's turned on
That's
or
why
not?
I wouldn't want to be tested. And when I say that, I'm referring to the majority of people with Alzheimer's disease. If you get tested, there's another gene called the APOE4 gene. If you have that, and 1 in 4 of us will, you do have an increased chance of getting Alzheimer's, which is a concern. But there isn't anything you can do about it except lifestyle. We know you can play around and really influence your genes, even that gene, by changing the lifestyle.
Is
What's
that true?
good for your
you
heart.
really can?
So why not
Yes.
find out, right?
But would you do want to know the results?
I would do
I
anything
don't-
possible. If someone said eat almonds, eat some fish, take fish oil pills, I would do anything I could if I knew I had the gene,
I would
right?
too, and you know what? We already know what to do. I have a lot of heart disease in my family. I'm taking those steps. I don't think I want that sword over my head that doesn't tell me unequivocally. If Alzheimer's was unequivocal, yes or no, but it's not.
Interesting.
It just says, a lot of these gene tests just increase your risk. Do you want to live with that increased risk when you can just take all the steps to live well? Anyway, it's a big responsibility.
Yeah, I just was going to say some people need that little kick in the butt. You know, some people
Yes.
need the sword of Damocles over their head going, jump or sit down, but you've got to make a choice. So,
And that's a good
yeah.
reason to do the testing. I agree with you.
Thank you, Dr. Savard. We're going to be right back.
One in 4 women are at risk for osteoporosis.
A song by Paul Beckman, Palu Rainbow Song, created January 27th, 2010. The song is going to be called "The Gene Map Could Change." The Gene Map can change using E minor and A minor 7. The gene map can change, it's not a given. You're finding out now there's more and other variables. You don't have to take it all now. You don't have to take the fact that your genes are the only thing that guides you. There's other factors besides now. Therefore your gene map can change. It's not totally written in your genes or the stars. You have the capacity to change your fate. We all are on the cusp, on the verge of making decisions in our lives. Things that will help us to live healthy and wise. And if we don't, we risk dis-ease. What's it gonna be, people? What do you see? What do you see now? What do you see?